Fix it in post is a commonly used phrase in filmmaking that refers to relying on the post-production process to fix issues that occur on set. However, this is a dangerous mindset for a filmmaker to have because often there are many issues that occur on set that can't actually be fully fixed in post, and relying on this will unfortunately often lead to a negative outcome for your film. My name is Max, and I've been a professional video editor for the past 8 years, having worked on Emmy-winning projects. And today I'm going to be taking the most common issues that I see filmmakers often thinking they can fix in post and ranking them based on how fixable they actually are. So for this, I put together a little tier list ranking. So my bottom tier here is the cutting room floor. These are mistakes that unfortunately, no matter what you do, just cannot be fixed in post, and they will need to be resolved whilst on set. The next tier is it'll be a rough cut. These are mistakes that can be slightly improved, but that won't be completely fixed. The following tier is unlimited revisions. These are mistakes that can potentially be improved pretty significantly, but there are still a lot of variables and no guarantees of a successful outcome. The next tier is it'll cost you, and as the title suggests, these are issues that can be significantly improved in post, but they will come at a pretty hefty price tag. And finally, we have fix it in post. And these are issues that can be absolutely fixed in post-production with very little extra work involved. So there we go. These are my ranking categories. And now I'm going to be going through these issues that I have at the bottom and placing them in the category that I feel fit. All right, so the first issue at the bottom here is audio issues. All right, well, this is going to be our first entry into the cutting room floor. Audio issues, and I've talked about it on this channel before, but this is the issue that you want to avoid. If you rely on trying to fix audio problems that occur on set in post-production, it's very rarely going to lead to a seamless outcome. Today, you do have some post-production tools that can certainly help a little bit. You even have some AI tools these days in editing software that kind of make dialogue sound crisper, for example. But you're never going to get great audio if you record bad audio on set. I know some filmmakers think they can take badly recorded audio and just hope that a sound mixer can make it sound really good, and that's absolutely never going to be the case, no matter how many plugins you throw at it. The only way you can 100% turn bad audio into pro audio is by doing ADR. So that's when later after production, actors will go into a recording booth and they'll just re-record their lines. But this is certainly, costly to do, but you can do it. But that's the only way you can fix bad audio. But if you're just trying to take the bad audio and turn it into good audio, never going to happen. So that belongs on the cutting room floor. The next one here is bad set design. So what I mean by that is, if you have set design or a location that you realize isn't really telling your story, for example, if your main character is supposed to live in low-income housing, but the only location you had available was a nice home, and you didn't do the set design to make it look down market, some filmmakers will try to see if a visual effects artist can make the space look grungier, add some grime to the walls, things like that. These are some issues that people will try to improve in post. And this I think is going to be my first entry into it'll cost you. Because I think for the most part, a great visual effects artist can do things to the environment of a set to enhance the storytelling. But visual effects artists are very costly. I do want to have a caveat to this. If they will be limited by the footage you give them. For example, if you film something really poorly, it is not well lit, the camera is super shaky, and it's just kind of amateur level production, your visual effects artist is going to be limited by that in terms of how convincing their digital add-ons can be. But if you do give them a professionally shot thing, but you just need some enhancements, that can usually be done, but it'll definitely cost you a pretty penny. All right, the next one is add camera movement. Now, when I say this, I'm obviously not referring to like extreme cases, right? You can't take, for example, if you shot something on a tripod and it's still, you can't then have the camera, move all around the room. But sometimes filmmakers won't have the time or won't have the budget to do simple camera motion, like a little push into a shot or a pulling out from a shot or sliding side to side. If you were to do those actually in camera on set, you would need to physically move the camera in a smooth motion, often through tools like a Dana dolly or a slider. And some filmmakers just don't have the budget to do it. And in which case, they will shoot it in a static way and then ask the editor to add some digital movement. And this I will actually put in Fix It in Post. Like anything on this list, there are going to be exceptions. It really depends on how drastic you want the movement to be. For example, if you have a wide shot and you want the camera to push in from this wide landscape into a close-up of a subject that's far from the camera, the editor is going to be limited because, the more you digitally expand footage, the more degradation you're going to introduce into the footage. So that is not really something that is fixable in post. But if you have some subtle movement, like for example, a soft little push in to add some extra tension to a shot, that is something that your editor can do very easily at absolutely no extra cost. So that's why I'm going to put it into Fix It in Post. But obviously understand that super drastic reinvention of motion, that can't be done. Okay, continuity errors. So these are errors where you accidentally have inconsistencies in your shots. So for example, let's say your character in one shot is holding a glass in his right hand, but then in the next shot, accidentally the actor held it in the left hand. That when you cut from the shot that has it in the right hand to the shot where he has it in his left hand, that's going to introduce a continuity error. It's not seamless and it can be a little jarring to an audience. Can editors fix continuity errors? Well, I think for the most part, there are things that can be done, but there are going to be some caveats to it. So I'm going to place this into unlimited revisions. Something that an editor can do, for example, to conceal a continuity error is they can choose to not cut to the camera angle where the inconsistency happened. For example, if in 3 of your shots, the actor has the glass in their right hand, but in one of the shots, they have it in the left, the editor might just choose to omit the shots where the actor was holding it in their left hand to not introduce the continuity error. But there are just some times where you absolutely have to cut between 2 shots, and there are continuity errors within those 2 shots. It happens. And in that case, really, there's nothing that the editor can do. But the reason why it's not lower in this list is because some great movies have continuity errors in them, and the audience often doesn't really notice them. As long as they're involved in the story, they won't really pick up on these little minor inconsistencies. For example, there's a funny example of this in Pretty Woman, where Julia Roberts and Richard Gere are eating breakfast together at a table. And in one of her shots, Julia Roberts is clearly eating a croissant. But then in the next shot, she's eating a pancake. And it's clearly a mistake. Like, she didn't have the time to put the croissant down and pick up the pancake. But it's a small issue that most people probably won't notice, and it doesn't take away from the quality of the movie. So this isn't an issue that is too drastic, I don't think. For the most part, either something can be done or it won't be that noticeable. So that's why I'm putting it in unlimited revisions, but I'm not completely going to put it and fix it in post, because there is some extra work involved to try to be the architect of a scene that limits continuity errors. So it's a little bit of an extra hassle. It's not super easy. So the next one here is lighting issues. These are issues with your lighting. It's not well lit, it's overexposed, things like that. I'm going to put this in it'll be a rough cut because lighting issues can be improved a little bit, but they're not going to be completely fixed. For example, if you have a scene that's just way underlit and it's too dark and you want the colorist to brighten it, the colorist can brighten it a little bit, but the more you kind of artificially brighten it, the more you're going to introduce things like digital noise, color banding, and color degradation. And those just look really unpleasant. So there's a little threshold where things can be bumped up and improved slightly, but you can't take crappy shots and turn them into like the cinematography of Blade Runner 2049, for example. And I say that example because I had somebody ask me to make the shots look like Blade Runner 2049, and clearly what they shot was nowhere near that, and that's just never going to happen. The reason why I'm not putting it in the cutting room floor is because a bad image can sometimes be a stylistic choice. For example, films like the Blair Witch Project were intentionally shot in a very lo-fi manner. They look really kind of rough, but it's part of the stylistic element of it. So audiences can often be pretty lenient with how something looks, and you can always kind of pass it off as a style as long as everything else is done professionally. If your audio is great, if your performances are great, if the editing is great, a bad image can just be a stylistic thing, or it can just be easily forgiven by the audience because they won't always take them out of the film. But something like audio issues, if you have those in your movie will suffer, and that's why that's cutting room floor, but not quite the color. So the next issue is missing coverage, and I've talked about this on the channel before, but missing coverage is when you don't capture shots that you should capture in order for the story to edit together smoothly. For example, let's say you have a dialogue scene between two characters and you get a wide shot, but you only get a close-up of one of the actors and you don't get a close-up of the other. And that can happen either because you ran out of time or you just forgot to get it. That's missing coverage. I'm going to put this... I think I'm going to put it in unlimited revisions. I'm tempted to put it in it'll be a rough cut because if you don't get the shots you need to get, sometimes there's really not much the editor can do. But I really, as an editor, I always try to approach a scene with the mindset of how can we maximize what we do have? And how can we take what we have and really try to make it work? So, for example, in a scene where you just have a wide shot and a close-up of one character, but you're entirely missing the close-up of the other, you have a couple options. You can either choose to stay on the wide shot the whole time, and maybe you can add a little digital movement to the shot, right? Going back to the camera movement, add a little push into the shot to kind of make it feel more dramatic. Or you can cut between the wide shot and the close-up of one of the characters and just never cut to the close-up of the other. And that can be interesting. And that can be an interesting approach to editing a scene if it tells some of your story. For example, if you do have the close-ups of the character that has the more emotional journey in the scene, then not cutting to the close-up of the other can allow those close-ups to really land. Things like that. There are ways to kind of try to make what you have work, but there are a lot of variables to this, and there is no guarantee that an editor can really make a great scene out of a scene that's missing coverage. And that's why I'm putting it in unlimited revisions, because sometimes filmmakers do forget to get really key shots that you absolutely need for the edit to work. And in those cases, there's nothing your editor can do to fix that. The only thing you can do is do reshoots. Reshoot the scene and capture those and do what's called pickups to capture the things that are missing. So that's why there's a lot of variables to it. So I'm going to put it in unlimited revisions, but I don't think it quite belongs into lower tiers because I do think for the most part, there's always something your editor can do to improve the scene and really kind of make it work. Okay. Next one is out of focus shots. And I'm not going to waste any time, and I'm putting that straight into the cutting room floor. If your shots are out of focus, there's nothing your editor can do to fix it. You know, they have digital, kind of similar to the audio, you have some digital tools that can sharpen an image, but those tend to come out looking wonky and a little odd and very artificial. And so if your shots are out of focus, your editor has two options. One, don't include the shots that are out of focus. But if the shots that are out of focus are key shots and they need to be in the movie, they're going to be in, and your movie is absolutely going to suffer. Unless, of course, you're able to do reshoots. But you can't fix an out of focus shot. All right, the next one is performance issues. So these are issues with your actors. If your actors aren't giving you the performance you want them to give for whatever reason, and you want the editor to kind of cut around it and put together something good, how fixable is this? Well, I'm going to place it in unlimited revisions because I actually do think an actor's performance can be significantly improved in the edit. There are things an editor can do to really bring out the best out of an actor. For example, the most commonly used technique is if you do multiple takes of a scene, the editor will pick the best parts of each take that really bring out the best of the actor's performance and Frankenstein them together to create a much better performance than you felt it was when you were on set. Let's say in one take, the actor has a pretty strong start, but then completely downslides. But then in take 4, they have a pretty good end to the performance. You can stitch those two together and create a pretty solid performance. Now, there are variables. If your actor screwed up, no disrespect, messed up every take, and you just weren't able to get anything good out of the actor, then obviously your editor is kind of handcuffed to what was captured. So that's why it's not going any higher, because there are a lot of variables at play and there are no guarantees that a solid performance can be constructed. But there are some cases where it can. That's why it's not a lost cause, and you shouldn't freak out if the performances aren't quite singing on set, because usually the editor can really find the best parts and put them together and make something that is way better than you thought it was initially. Okay, now we have shaky footage. And here I'm absolutely not referring to intentional shaky footage. There are a lot of filmmakers that like filming things in like a handheld style where the footage is naturally shaky. Most famous example that comes to mind is Paul Greengrass, who directed the Bourne movies and Green Zone and things like that. His style is very intentionally shaky, to the point where me as an audience member, I always get seasick in his movies. Like I get motion sick. But anyway, that's besides the point. What I'm referring to here is footage that was not intended to be shaky, but through mistakes on set happened to be shaky. I actually had an example of this in my most recent shoot. I shot a film 2 weekends ago. And I wanted a shot where I had the camera on a Dana dolly. And when the camera's on a dolly, I wanted a very smooth, slow push in camera, where we kind of push in on the character. And there were 2 takes at the very beginning where there was an issue with the rigging of the dolly. And whenever the cinematographer would get halfway through the dolly would kind of shake and the camera would bump. And thankfully, my brilliant cinematographer, shout out Rick Bay, was able to figure out what was going on with the Dana dolly and fix it and make it super smooth, so I didn't have that issue in the remaining takes. So I have a very great take from it, and I'm very happy. But let's say we didn't have time to fix that issue, or we just didn't know how to fix the issue, and we had this camera bump in the shot. That's what I'm referring to with this kind of shaky footage issue. And I'm going to place this in... I'm between unlimited revisions and it'll be a rough cut. I'm going to place it in it'll be a rough cut. I'm sorry. I'm going to promote it. Unlimited revisions. Okay, and I'm going to explain my thought process here. So I'm putting it in unlimited revisions because it actually really depends on how severe the shaking is in the camera. So, for example, I edit in Premiere Pro, and there is a very powerful tool that's called Warp Stabilizer. And what that does is if I get shaky footage that a filmmaker wants to smoothen out, I'll apply this warp stabilizing plugin onto the footage, and it can sometimes pull off some miracles. It can take shaky footage and really make it seamlessly smooth and still. But there are other times where I apply it and it makes it way worse. It makes it creates a super like wavy look to the footage that looks super artificial and super wacky. So it entirely depends on the nature of the shot. Rule of thumb is if you have what's meant to be a stable shot, let's say you put the camera on a tripod, and for whatever reason, your camera was a little wonky or your tripod was a little wonky and the shot wasn't entirely stable and had some shake to it, that's usually very easily fixable in post. And if that was the only issue, I would probably put it and fix it in post. But if your shots have some kind of natural movement embedded into them, for example, if you're trying to do like a push-in, like I was doing with my dolly, and there was an issue that happened, or you're trying to move side to side, things like that. If you have motion in your shot and you want to stabilize the shaky motion, that tends to be a lot harder for the program to calculate because there's a lot more tracking involved, and it can lead to a lot of wonky looking errors. So that's why it kind of really depends on how bad the shaking is and what your shot actually looks like. So, a lot of caveats all over the place, and that's why I'm putting it in unlimited revisions. And that's also why I was tempted to put it in it'll be a rough cut, because there's really no guarantees, and oftentimes there's not much that can be done, but there are certainly options where it can be very easily fixed. So the variables just place it into unlimited revisions. I hope that makes sense. That was a little bit of a complicated one. The next issue is VFX to fix errors. So when that's why I didn't just put like visual effects, because some films just require visual effects, and you have visual effects artists who can do that. But what I'm talking about here is an error that happened on set that you're going to try to use visual effects to repair. An example that comes to mind. I'll take an example, real life example. So I was an editor on the Emmy-winning series The Shop. It's not a movie, but it's a TV show. Produced by LeBron James. And what the series is about is, a bunch of celebrities get together in a barbershop and they just talk all things entertainment, pop culture, goes on and on. They talk about anything. And the editors kind of make it fun and cool and interesting. But because of the nature of how this thing was shot, it was shot multi-camera, where you had multiple camera operators just around the barbershop. And it was very hard to avoid getting a camera operator in your shot. Like you would be filming LeBron James and you would see right behind him, you would see a camera crew, pop in behind him. And there was just no real way to avoid them when you were filming on set. So they asked visual effects artists in post-production to digitally remove all the camera equipment and all the camera crew that we see around the celebrities. So that's an example of an error that happens on set. In this case, it was unavoidable. that we were trying to then fix in post-production. And this I'm going to put straight up to it'll cost you, because visual effects artists are pretty freaking amazing. And I'm always blown away by what they're able to do. And there's a lot that they can fix. But you just have to know that it's going to come at a hefty cost, because it's a very labor-intensive job and it takes a lot of very specific expertise, and it's going to be pricey. So yeah, putting that up, and it'll cost you. So examples that fit into this are, like I said, unwanted camera crew that you're trying to digitally remove. Things like unwanted equipment that pops up. Sometimes you'll see there's no way to really avoid like a boom mic in a shot, or you accidentally capture a boom mic in a shot. You might need a visual effects artist to remove the boom shot. There are some things an editor can do. I'm not going to say they can't. Like, for example, if you just have a boom shot that's popping in top of frame, your editor can pretty easily, just punch in on the shot and crop out the mic. But those are, examples of minor errors. And what I'm really referring to here are more significant errors that will require visual effects to remove them. So anyway, doable, but it'll cost you. And now our final issue is story issues. This is a big one. And I don't know. I don't know where to place this guy. I'm going to put him into the Mac Daddy, what turned out to be the Mac Daddy of this category, and that is unlimited revisions. Like anything, I'm very tempted to put it in these bottom two tiers, being like, nah, sorry, there's not much you can do. But I do think a great editor can take a story that's not working and reinvent it in the editing process, in collaboration with the filmmaker, of course. But the gold needs to be there from the beginning. For example, take one of the famously worst movies of all time. I mean, I hate saying that's mean, but what's considered one of the worst movies of all time, The Room. You're never going to take that and find the gold in the footage and make an Academy Award winning movie. Never going to happen. So in that case, it's kind of a lost cause. And I'll argue they did the best they could and it became a cult classic. So they made something work. But that's where the editor can't work their magic, if there's no gold to begin with. But sometimes the gold is there. It just needs an editor's objective perspective to come in and extract it and make something really great. So that's why there's a lot of caveats. There's a lot of maybes, ifs, and buts. So it's going in unlimited revisions and it's not going any higher, but it doesn't deserve to be lower because sometimes the editor can work some magic. It is the invisible art after all. Okay, so here we have it. Here's the tier list. Very middle heavy, very unlimited revisions heavy, and not what I was expecting. When I kind of started this, I was like, oh, this is all going to be the bottom two tiers. I want to prove a point that nothing can be fixed in post. But if I'm actually being very pragmatic and objective about it, I think things can be done. But these things at the bottom, audio issues, out of focus issues, nothing can be done at all. So just really make sure you nail those on set. Those are top priorities. Make sure everything's in focus and make sure everything sounds great. Anything after that, varying degrees of fixable. So there you have it. I hope this video was helpful in kind of shedding some light on the fix it and post myths and what is a myth and what can be kind of fixed and improved. But I will die on the hill that as much as you can fix on set, the better off your movie will be. Because these mistakes are all, for the most part, pretty avoidable before you get into post-production. And if you're going to start bogging down your post-production with trying to fix and put paint on these issues, you are inherently doing your movie a disservice. What you should always aim to do, not always feasible, we all completely get as editors, but what you should always aim to do is capture everything as best as you possibly can, being very aware of these fix and post myths, and try to just address them before you get into post, and then let the editors and sound mixers and colorists really just enhance the great stuff that's there. That's how you make a truly awesome movie from start to finish. But issues are sometimes inevitable on set, and these are how your editors and post-production gurus can fix them. If you like this kind of videos, please let me know. I had a lot of fun making this tier list. If this is kind of content that's resonating, please let me know in the comments. If there's anything that I did not include in this list as like a fix it and post myth, please let me know in the comments, and I'll get back to you with where I think it fits on this tier list. If you want to create your own tier list, by all means, make a video, tag me in it. I would love it. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.